So a lot of what happened as coming out as a lesbian was just to suddenly immerse myself for the first time in a world where sexuality was something that I enjoyed, was something we talked about, was present, and it coincided with really wanting to spend my time with women.
Winter 1971. Dear family and friends, I have begun to gain a sense of the strength of my body and to love myself physically. I take karate and do exercises regularly, and I'm even trying to improve my posture, especially my slumped shoulders, as a reflection of my new physical self-confidence. I'm working to be more straightforward about my opinions and anger, rather than to play the middle-class diplomatic game of smoothing things over. Take care, Charlotte.
I had been working over the years through the civil rights movement and the anti-war movement and the church movement with hundreds of people around the country. And I didn't want to come out individually, one by one, with everybody and figure it out. I literally sent out a mass mailing of this letter, and I got back a few brave and wonderful responses, and a lot of non-responses. It's also when I left my own relationship to the church, because as I became a feminist, I was more and more critical, even of the progressive wing of the church. But when I came out as a lesbian, I said I cannot be in a church that doesn't recognize me as equal. The mood and era was one of people separating in order to create their issues. I had been in the civil rights movement when blacks began to demand black power and say to whites, you have to work on your own people, you have to leave now. And then I had been in the women's movement where we had essentially done the same thing. We had created women's only projects and told men that we had to have our own space to create our politics, to create our own way of working. It was the nature of the way politics was done in that time period. I then started to form a group with Rita May that was a consciousness-raising lesbian feminist group that over a few months' time became the Furies. We decided to declare ourselves separatist.
The women's liberation movement had been our family, our mother, and our child. But when we began to proclaim our love for one another in ways that went beyond the boundaries of family love, most of us did not realize how savagely our sisters in the women's movement would disinherit us.
Here are all these lesbians, and we're working our butts off to get birth control and abortion, primarily issues that related to straight women. We were doing that when we were in the closet. And then when we came out as lesbians and said lesbian rights also have a place in the feminist agenda, the straight women said, no, 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 because they're already calling us man-hating dykes. It'll ruin the movement. And there was really a big split in women's liberation.
We needed to develop a politics to make clear to people why we thought this was so important, why we didn't think you could achieve women's liberation without dealing with homophobia, without dealing with lesbian rights.
When we were in the Furies, we lived in 2 collective houses. What we were trying to do was create the revolution in practice that we understood in theory. Of course, that was much harder to do than to get the theory right. It was extremely hard to live communally in the way that we did. We didn't have any private property, so there was a closet with all our clothes in it. We had a communal bedroom, so if you wanted private time with your lover, you had to reserve a special room. I don't even remember if we had our own toothbrushes. We shared everything. We were very class conscious. We were something like 17 to 27.
Oh, baby, where you been to look so drawn? I've been living with the hungry, the recognized forlorn. I've been eating with the lonely, and we ate each other raw.
After a year of working in the Furies, which was a very intensive experience, basically 12 people looking at and examining everything in our lives, constant consciousness raising and criticism, self-criticism, it was very self-cannibalizing.
Oh, baby, where you been to look so drawn?